excited for as the code mentoring community. And today we're actually going to jump into something that I feel a lot of people have had some problems with as developers, or maybe that's not something you've really considered, which is actually design and how to make your designs look good. So a little bit about who we are. We're an international community that I started this back in Melbourne. We also run this out of Colombia in Medellin. Started it here in Toronto as well. You can find us at codementoring.co, the GitHub project I was talking about a little bit earlier. We're definitely on Slack as well, so I highly recommend you guys join this. I'm sure someone will post a link in the chat. Definitely jump on Slack and join us. Ask questions, get involved. This is a really good resource for those who want to, get help with anything that they're working on as a developer. Cool. So today's talk, right, is kind of around this problem that we see. It's typical developer-styled forms or websites, very 1990s kind of look. But unfortunately, the skills that we learn as a developer don't translate into design. They're actually very different disciplines. One of them's more logical and focused around the inputs and the outputs, and design is more creative and focused. There's less specifics that you have to sort of follow typically with design. However, this talk today is, can we bring some of those rules into our design process so that we can follow them as developers, something that we're used to. So today, let's jump through the top 10 visual mistakes that I find that most developers make on their portfolio websites, on their projects, and various things like that, to really make your make your content stand out more, make your projects look better in that job interview. So the first one that I wanted to run through with you guys is color. Now, this is a really big thing I see a lot of developers do really badly when they first start out. Is you can see this, in this example, right? We've got this black background, we've got this pretty awful colored contrast, we've got this weird gradient from the white to yellow, and this is not a small website. This is the Yale School of Art. You'd expect a lot better from an actual art director. However, this is, there's all sorts of things going on over the place that doesn't look that great, in contrast to something like this. Right, this website has a much simpler palette. It's much more refined, right? It's easier on the eyes. More specifically, it's tailored to the message that you're trying to deliver. Now, this is kind of going to be one of my meta points for this entire evening is what are you communicating? Because that's really what design is about. It's about, here is this message that I have, and I'm trying to give it to you. I'm trying to deliver it to you. Now, as developers, our job is, we don't really care about the message, do we? We just care about, does it work? Does it do the thing that it's intended to do? Whereas design really is getting into that empathy and saying, who am I talking to? What am I delivering? And is things like color, is this translating the right kind of emotion into, the audience that I'm giving? It's like almost like you go dress yourself for a job interview or for a date. You're not going to go and wear a tracksuit or a tuxedo to a job interview. It'll be a bit strange, right? It'll be a mismatch. It's the wrong messaging. And it's the same thing with some of these concepts like color, right? This is a really good one. Another one is spacing, right? So this is another thing I find typically as developers, we don't actually let our content and our images and our text breathe. We often, this is obviously a very extreme example, right? But there's a lot of developers I see when they're building something, they push it all together, kind of like what we saw with this, right? Everything's kind of smashed together. It's very logical looking, but it's not a nice experience as a user to go through. And good luck trying to navigate this website. This looks like a Where's Waldo puzzle, right? As opposed to something like this. It breathes, right? I think this is a digital studio. And you can see it's got a lot more space around it. By having this space, this is quite a lot of space, right? In contrast to something like this, it really puts the emphasis on what we're trying to communicate, right? Heads together, hands together, right? I can't read that because I think it's a different language, but this really puts the emphasis on what you're trying to communicate. So spacing is a really important element that is often underutilized by developers to really emphasize certain pieces of what you're trying to communicate, of your content, of your images. I'd say to begin with, when you're experimenting with this as a designer or an entry-level designer, as a developer, err on the side of too much, right? Whatever space you think it is, add a little bit extra, just to start off with and see what that looks like. And you might find initially, oh, it feels like too much, but then slowly you'll let your eyes adjust to it, and actually fits really well. It fits really nicely. That's kind of the other thing about design that's interesting and very different to development. In development, it either works or it doesn't, right? You either get the error or you don't. It succeeds. Design doesn't have that process. Design is very much a, let me think about it. Let's get a feeling, a sense for this. And sometimes these things can take a bit of time to sink in. You have to actually work with a design system or the spacing or the color palette a little bit to actually get a sense of what it feels like before you make a decision as to whether you go ahead or. So that's another thing to keep in mind in your process, especially coming from a development background, is it's not a cut and dry, solution. It's a much more varied approach. There's much more room or shades of gray in between. So definitely keep that in mind as you're creating these pieces of content. So here is another one. This is something I see all the time, especially in resumes, right? Or in portfolios. We see this text that comes all the way to the edge, right? Now I'm curious, actually, for the designers who are here, right? What is the optimal text length for a paragraph? Does anybody know?
Sorry, you're saying what's the optimal text length?
Yeah. So for this paragraph here, right? See how
I actually can't
all
see
the way to
right
the end.
now.
It's very difficult to read.
I actually can't. Personally, I can't
zoom in
a
little bit.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah, I can't exactly zoom in, but okay. So in contrast to something like this, right? So React has, well, this is as an example. It's broken up these pieces of text into little bite-sized readable chunks, as opposed to this massive thing that just extends off the page. Our eyes actually have a certain length of line that we'd like to read before we'd like to go to a new line. And there's actually a whole science to this that you can look into around typography, around the optimal length. I think it's about 16 words, 12 to 16 words, and then you want to jump onto the next line, right? Now, another thing with this, it's not mentioned on this slide, but another thing is the line height. So you can see here how everything's kind of cramped together, right? Whereas here, right, the spacing between the lines is much more readable, right? It actually means that we can read this piece of content much faster. And that's something as a designer or someone who's creating something, you want it to be readable. You want it to be easy. You don't want it to be visually intense and sort of foreboding in a sense. Oh, don't read me, is kind of what you're saying. Whereas this invites you into say, hey, have a look at what I'm doing, read what I'm saying. Whereas this is a lot to take in. So any questions on anything we've covered so far, with text width or spacing or colors? You guys have any questions on this before I move ahead? do you guys notice this in your own designs? If you're building your own websites, have you guys seen some of these things already that you've noticed?
Well, I noticed Reddit have a very clutter interface. If that
Reddit.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at Reddit. Are you talking about the new design or the old design?
I don't know. Just go in there and see what it looks like. From how I use, yeah. Is that the new design that they have?
I think this is the new design. So they've upgraded this. But is there a way to access the old one?
Yeah, the old one is just plain text.
Yeah, the old one. Another one is Hacker News. So news.y combinator.
It looks like an old forum layout.
All right. This is very hard to read. It's kind of clear, and people love it because it has its own style, and it's kind of nostalgic. But this is not. Oh, sorry, on the comments itself. Okay, there's a UX problem. I click on this. I expect that to take me to the discussion. I have to actually click on the comments. So this here, right? This is not optimized. This is not good typography, right? The line height's too small. The length is too large. It's trailing off the page. It's not very nice to read and scroll down through this, right? Especially these big blocks of text. Right, there's a lot of typography. Pardon me?
That's the old Reddit.
Yeah, this is Hacker News. So and old Reddit looks very similar to this. So, this is an example of what I was saying before about text width. You can kind of see what I'm illustrating here, right? So it's a little challenging to read. What else, team? What else have we found so far? Right. So the next thing we've got is hierarchy. So I don't know what this website is doing. To me, this is completely confusing. All right, we've got all of these massive. Are they sliders? I don't know. We've got this. This is the most important thing right now. That's where my eye is drawn to. This is the most important thing. Typically, it's often on the right hand side, and then it kind of does a zigzag, right? Automatically, your eyes. But what is this? What is the benefit of this? Right? We've got these big buttons. Is that a button or is that a scroll bar? I don't even know what this is. Right? And we've got this small menu item underneath. So this is very visually confusing. And your job or role as a designer is to create a system that the user can follow. It has order. It has structure. Take this, for example, right? This is the Mozilla Development Network web docs. It's a really good example of this. It's very clear. It's got this very understandable title at the top. We've got the header, right? We've got each of these subheadings. We've got a really nice navigation. Right? I know how to move around this page. Now, this might be an example of something that's a little bit boring to look at, but it's a really good example of good hierarchy. All right, and then you can start to work out a way to combine those two. Right? One of the big discussions or kind of dichotomies between developers and designers is this term called form versus function. Right? Form being these really pretty styled things, right? And function being something like this. Everything's just chucked on the page. It's very easy to navigate. It's very easy to see all the options, but it doesn't perform well because it's very confusing. But it's very functional. So that's one of the consistent arguments between design and something you're constantly trading off. Right? As developers, we tend to err more on the side of function. If you come from more of a visual design background, you tend to err more on the side of design, right? And these beautiful things. Right? This is questionably less functional. So there's no, like I was saying before, there's no right or wrong answer in design like this. It's very much down to your individual taste. What are you trying to communicate? What's the message? Right? So any questions on hierarchy or any examples that you guys know of that have either really good hierarchy or really bad hierarchy? Right, what are some other ones? What's a really simple example? All right, let's go to, say, Google.
I think Facebook has a very good flow of
Facebook
hierarchy to that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I don't know if I'm logged in. I try not to log into Facebook anymore. All right, so even just on the login page, right? So you can see like the title. We've got these big headings, right? It's pretty clear. So you can see how we've grouped these things together. And we'll get into grouping later on, but this is very clear. We've got this section over here for people who want to come back. We've got this section over here for people who want to join. All right, it's very easy to navigate. It's either you're doing this or you're doing this. It's not all bunched up together. So that's a pretty good example of hierarchy. What else have we got? Here's another one, like a new tab, right? All right, so we've got the search thing at the top. All right, it's the biggest action. Maybe some previous things you want to go back to, right? So it's saying we think that this is the most important thing you'll do, and we think this is the second most important thing you'll do. So it's really thinking about getting back to that initial message and going, what am I trying to communicate, and what's the order of the importance, right? Do I want to start with my affiliate links? Well, no, you put that on the bottom of the footer, right? Usually you start with something like, why are you here? The title of the page, or some kind of main action that you want the user to do, right? So that's kind of how hierarchy falls into things, is you want to put the most important information right at the top. Now, this is the same for resumes, and people get this wrong all the time. Put your title right at the top, right? I think on mine, let me bring up my resume. All right, this is my website. Right at the first thing is this is what I do. This is who I am, right? It's not sitting somewhere in a little thing. I'm not saying, read through my entire resume to get a sense of what my skills are, especially on my resume itself. All right, if I bring that up. So you can see if I zoom out, right? Instantly, this is a one-page resume. Right? Instantly, you're knowing what I'm working with. Right? As a recruiter, because recruiters don't know these technologies. All they want to know is, do you tick the box? All right. So here's all the technologies that I tick the box in. Here's my main thing that I do, and here's my history. This is a good example of how I've tried to implement good hierarchy, breaking things down and whatnot. Cool. So does that kind of make sense, team, on hierarchy and why it's important? All right. Why things like this doesn't perform, and it's very confusing to use. And this is a better example of that. It guides you through that process. This is what I want you to do, you say, as the designer. So what's the next thing we've got? All right. Is it responsive? Right. Does it work well on mobile? Now, this is very surprising because these guys for this studio, they're actually a very good design studio, and they themselves don't optimize their own website, which I thought was very ironic. So much so that I thought I'd put it on this talk. Right? You do not want this. Right? Who here has been to a website on their mobile and gone, oh crap, I don't know how to navigate this. I have to look at it on my desktop. Right? How annoying is that as a user? This is something we all experience from time to time. Right? Sometimes we don't even go back to the website because it's not usable, or we forget about it. Right? Compared to something like this. Right? Google actually changes the dynamic layout. They add this. Let me show you. Right? If we go to google.com, Right, this is what it looks like on the web. Now here's a really cool trick for the developers who want to test this stuff out. Go right-click, inspect. Come into, see this icon here? Click on that, and boom. Now we've got a mobile. So if I refresh this page, all right, let's see how Google handles it. See how it's changed all this content? All right, it's brought out this menu. It's the same website. They've just really optimized it for mobile. So I can come through and, it's all very optimized for that mobile experience, on-the-go experience, small screens. What happens if we start moving it around? We'll see how it handles it. All right. So that's a good example of responsive design. All right. How does Meetup compare? As an example. All right. Meetup in. All right. Does that look like a good experience? Yeah. A little bit with these annoying pop-ups. Right. Does that come all the way in? It's nice that they've got this header. I think that's actually new. I don't think they had that before. Right. Come back out, and it's also not just for small screens, but it's also for large screens. So does it look good? Often as developers or designers will just organize the content for the screen that we're used to, but does it look good on an iMac or a TV? Right? Have you considered what your users will actually be consuming your content on? Right? Are they going to be looking at it on a mobile, or are you building a dashboard tool? And actually, you don't want to optimize for mobile. You actually want to optimize for a large television where they want to see all the statistics. Right? Think about who your users are and where it's going to be consumed, because that will give you a good indication on what you should be optimizing for in terms of responsiveness. Right? So any questions on responsive design and why it's needed and how it works? I hear someone saying something. Okay. So what else have we got? Loading bars. Oh my goodness. All right, this is a pet peeve of mine. Right? Why are we in 2020 and there's still loading bars for websites? I don't get it. Have we gone back to Flash? I was looking at one the other day. It's very interesting to see this resurgence of this. So I think there's Nana Asia was one that I recently came to. All right. Check this out. See this? See how long I'm waiting? All right, who's got a timer? Who's timing this? Why is this taking so long? What's going on? Give me some information. Tell me my progress, at least. Right? Is the website broken? I'm confused. Oh, now it works. Right? Why did that take so long? Right? There's nothing that complex on this page. Right? What's going on with this? Yes, it's beautiful. Right? Yes, it looks good and whatever. But you guys were with me. You saw that, right? You saw how long that took to load a relatively simple web page. Right? So don't do that. That's a very bad experience. Most people will just leave. If your website takes more than half a second, there's something wrong. Right? Now, that said, I know that sometimes you're working on projects that have a lot of data. So what can you do? Right? How do we fix this problem gracefully? Well, don't do this. Don't just have a number or something. Right? That's at least better than what we saw, right? That's actually giving us some progress. But the other one didn't have anything. What I like is LinkedIn's approach. Right? I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's this preloaded kind of pretend content. It's kind of saying, hey, something is coming, and this is what you can expect. It's gonna generally look like this. Facebook does it really well, as well. I think Dribble does it, but this is a great example. What I would call empty state or a ghost state. It's still loading, right? You're expecting something. But this is a much nicer experience than coming to a website and thinking, is it broken? Is my browser not compatible with the website? You know, it's very confusing to users. Whereas this is much nicer. It says, hey, everything's coming, just be patient. And you're slowly, gracefully giving things as they come through. Now that's a much better experience than just, you can just wait until we're ready for you. That's not a very nice thing, right? You're kind of like waiting outside a bar, right? Big long line at the bar and they're not even talking to you, right? Versus, you know, waiting outside the bar and you've got some, you know, waitress or waiter who comes out and says, hey, would you like to order some drinks before you come in, right? We'll serve them to you out here, or you can pre-order some food or something, right? You can't come in just yet, right? But here, we'll get the process rolling for you. So think about the experience that you want to give your users. Right? Any questions on loading bars? And anything we've covered so far?
Yeah, so for this loading bar example you showed, and yeah, I've noticed this in LinkedIn as well, especially. How would you like develop something like this? Is it like I need to have another file where I do this kind of CSS prior to loading? How does something like this?
That's a great question. And it really comes down to your implementation of how you're building out your components. I would actually build it into any component that is loading data. I would actually have it handle its own data, and it's actually responsible for its own loading state. So it will apply its own styling. The benefit that you have as well of having this is you don't get these content jumps. Right? I'll see if I can try and find a video of this because it's a pretty bad experience. Content jump. Images. Or maybe we'll try and see if we can find a GIF. Yeah, maybe not. See, that's a good example, right? It's slowly low. I don't know if you can see that. That's like sometimes you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like when you're loading on a website and then everything kind of jumps all over the place.
Yeah, especially when you when there's ads that's being loaded.
Yeah. So that's something you kind of want to avoid, and that's what this technique will really help you with. Is it pre-populates these things so that everything's not jumping around and moving around all over the place. You kind of your eyes have a chance to adjust and actually expect something before it all sort of moves around. So to answer your question, Rajat, it really comes down to the individual component and the libraries that you're using. But I would say if you're using something like React or Vue, handle it in the component. Like it's responsible for its own thing. Now, if you wanted to, and I've done this before, is you could actually have some nested ghost elements, like these pieces of text, for example, right, that just generate dummy data. And when your component is loading, you could just pre-configure some of these things together, right, to show what the user is going to expect. So you can use little individual components together, but I think the overall component should be responsible for its own state. The reason why is because you don't, as a developer, you don't want to be handling all that loading stuff outside the component. Right? Let's say I didn't write it. Let's say it's this profile screen here, right? Let's say I did not write this. I just want to put it on the page as a developer. I don't want to have to pre-configure it with loading states and whatever. That's nice because it means that the component itself is responsible for handling its ghost state or its empty state, and it's just going to update itself and refresh itself. As a component, who's someone who's using this component, I don't want to have to worry about that stuff. So definitely handle it inside. Does that answer your question, Rajat?
Yeah, but like sort of I wanted to know like how you actually design something like this. Is it like in that if condition where generally I used to have something like, oh wait, loading component, just a text, right? But I want to see how we do this design. Do I write the own CSS for that state, like a white background in this case, these gray rectangles? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you'll have separate CSS to target that.
Cool.
Yeah. And depending on your loading components, right, you might actually just be able to pre-configure them. You see, if all of your elements have loading components to them, right, there's very little CSS needed because they're all responsible for their own loading, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I'm gonna handle it in that component.
Precisely.
Own CSS, their own CSS. Yeah.
Cool. So this is something that I've been alluding to over this, the past talk, focusing on some stuff. So this is Salesforce's website. I'm a little bit confused as to what they do here. Right? They've got a header. They've got, like every other bloody company right now, they've got a COVID banner. They've got, I think this is supposed to be what they mainly do. Then they've got this blog stuff. Right? They've got the Salesforce Care. How does that relate to this? They've got to try for free, but they've also got to start my free trial. It's all very confusing. I don't know what to expect when I don't even know what they're doing here. Right? This is let's chat down the bottom. They got feedback. It's all over the shop. Right? I can call them as well. So, as a user, as someone who, let's say I don't know what Salesforce is, do you think I'm going to get a clear idea of what this company does if I come to this website? Not really. I'm very confused. Right? In contrast, let's look at MailChimp. Right? See how nice this is? Right? Your business is growing. Now what? They're engaging me with this really nice language. All right? Get MailChimp's all-in-one marketing platform to help you reach your goals faster. That's what. Right? Sign up. Boom. Sign up free. Right? It's the same consistent messaging compared to this, right? Try for free, start my free trial, which I'm confused. Watch demos. Right? This is a very streamlined approach. Right? Here is what you're going to do. You're going to sign up. This big button. Right? The messaging is clearer. Right? Marketing platform for small business compared to connect to your customers in a whole new way with world's number. Is it a CRM platform? But then you've also got the care. Like, what is this? I'm confused. Whereas this is like, cool, it's a marketing platform. This is what we're, right? There's lots of examples like this. I've actually got some, in later slides, I've got some examples with Stripe. But Stripe is another really nice website that has some very targeted messaging. Right? The new standard in online payments. There's no question about what they do. Boom, this is what we do. Online payments. Start now. Right? The complete toolkit for internet business, taking payments. It's developer first, right? It's very targeted. It knows the audience. Right? It knows that it's okay to put some code on the homepage because it knows that it's targeting developers as the first match. Right? This is an excellent design. Excellent design. Very targeted. Yeah, they've got a very complex set of offerings, but if you actually go into each of these products, right, billing, right, they all specify. So having landing pages for each of the things that you do, breaking up your content into targeted things, right? It's better for SEO. It's better for design. Right? See how each of these things is targeting one specific thing, right? It's focused as opposed to Salesforce, which kind of does everything at once. Now, Salesforce is a great platform, from what I've heard, right? But it doesn't communicate that very nicely. So, any questions on focus? Right, to bring it back to a resume perspective, right? This is what I do. I'm a senior tech lead and mentor and designer. This is what I do. Right? I have my stuff down here. Right? 12 technologies that I mainly work with. Of course, there's a lot more, but this is you get a very clear sense of this versus someone who doesn't have a title. Right? They just put their name, and then they have a big long spiel about who they are and whatever. I have to go and read through that whole thing. So to bring it back to a personal example of what you guys can do in your everyday, right? This is a really good example of just, hey, this is what I focus on. right? A snapshot straight away. So I would recommend in your own personal websites and resumes to focus on one thing or one thing you do. Maybe you're a creative developer, right? Maybe you're a developer that focuses on algorithms and optimizations, right? Maybe you're a front-end developer that just builds front ends and builds front ends really well. Maybe you're an expert at building dashboards. Say that. Tell us who you are, right? What's your niche that makes you different? What's your focus that you spend your time on? Because as you start to add more things into the product, it waters down that messaging, and it dilutes it, and it's not potent anymore, and people start to get confused, right? So think about this in your own lives. How can you communicate who you are and what you're doing, whether it's your resume, whether it's your company's website? Focus on one thing and do it really, really well, right? So what else we got, team? Any other questions on focusing? Any examples you guys have for unfocused websites or really good targeting? Kind of brings me to the next point, which is actually kind of already spoken about, which is audience, right? Would you guys believe, I don't know if you can read this text, would you guys believe this is actually for a technology university? Right, does this make you feel like they're actually up to date with the technology? How relevant is this design? Right? Compared to, like we were saying before, with Stripe. Right? It's using a visual identity that matches the market that it's talking to. Right? If I'm about to go into tech and to learn how to build websites and whatnot, this is not a very inspiring website to say, I trust you to teach me. Right? Welcome to the University of Advancing Technology official website. Yeah, right. Maybe 20 years ago. But 2020? I don't think so. Right? But this...
Mark says I trust that website.
Say again?
Mark said he wouldn't trust that website.
No, I don't trust this website. This guy doesn't even look like he trusts this website. Right, the main guy on the damn thing, he's like, I'm not quite sure what these things around my head are. Right? This does not fill me with confidence that I would choose this as a university to go to, let alone give money to. Right? Again, right? This is who we are. This is what we do. Look, here are some famous brands that I know as a developer. Like Shopify, Instacart, right? Postmates. This is cool. I get this. And then, as we saw, right, scrolling down on the website, go back to the homepage. Scrolling down the website, say, hey, look, here's the language I understand. They're talking to me. I'm a developer. They're talking to me. I get this. Developers first. That's cool. There's a reason why Stripe is so big. It's because they know their product really, really well, and they know their audience really, really well, and they're focused on that audience, and they solve that problem. Right, Canva is another one. A good mate of mine works for Canva as a product owner. He talks about this all the time. Right, they're Australia's largest company now, largest growing company, because they do things really, really well. They solve one problem, right? Design anything, publish anywhere. Right? It's not confusing as to what they do. Right? It's very specific. And they've solved that problem really, really well. They know their audience like the back of their hand. Now, again, to apply this to your own resumes, to apply this to your own websites, right? Who are you trying to attract with your content, with your resume writing? I think I was asking this to someone earlier today. I forget exactly who it was, which is, what kind of jobs are you looking for? Because that will determine the type of things, the type of projects that you do, that you put on your GitHub, the way you communicate, right? What do you guys think I'm trying on my website. I load it up. Right, what does this communicate to you? Right, it's a very simple design. It's very clean. That says something about how I'm approaching things. Very organized, but it's also different. It stands out a little bit. Right, it's unique, but it's also not so unique that it's, you know, arty-farty and confusing. Right. So think about your audience and who you're targeting. Right, if you're a creative developer, you might decide to have something a little bit more unique. All right, go to Css Design Awards. They have some excellent inspiration on here, right? There was another one I was looking at earlier today. This guy. All right. This is pretty cool. All right. Interactive media design agency. All right. He can get away with having a website like this because this is the kind of work that he wants to do. Right? See how all of his work reflects the way his resume actually looks. Right? So design your website for the types of jobs that you want to do. Make sense? Know your audience. So that's a big one, team. All right, what else we got? Last one. Any questions on audience before we go to the last one? Seriously invest in this, guys. It's a really important one. It's verging more on the side of marketing, but it's a really good thing for you to think about. You know, in your resume, in your own life, and even in your job interview. You know, are you trying to be a full stack developer, or are you trying to be a front end developer? There's a big difference in how you talk and how you communicate what you're trying to do. Cool. All right, last one, simplicity. Right? This is hell. Right? I don't know how to use this thing. Right? Now, as a developer, we go, oh yeah, this makes sense. They got regex, they've got files and casing and auto date and numbering. Yeah, this is cool. Like append folder name, that's very useful. Move and copy. Right? As developers, we like this because it's like form versus function. Right? All the functions are available to us. But guess what? Not everyone else is as functional as you are, or thinks about it in the same way. Right? Some other people, they like to have something that's a little bit easier to follow. Right? It guides you through. Right? This is probably an example of extreme minimalism, but it gives you an example of, okay, cool. Name, work, about, post, and inspiration, and selected works. That's it. It solves that problem really, really well without adding all this extra stuff on top, right? Now, another good example of this is, let's say you might say, all right, Tristan, well, I do need to have a lot of things on the page, right? Well, make sure they're organized well, right? So I think it's, let me go to my other browser. The website I liked recently, right? TradingView, which is about, you know, stocks and investment graphs and whatnot. Now, there's a lot of things going on this page. Right? You might even argue that it's actually a little bit too complicated. However, right, the caveat to oversimplifying things, right, is you want to actually make sure that you're matching that audience. Now, for these guys, they might actually say, actually, you know what, I don't want it to be simple. I want to see the complexity. So this might actually be a case for complexity. It really comes down to the audience that you're talking to. Who are you addressing? Because if they just address this in the most simple way, right? I think the Apple stocks, Apple's kind of known for its very clean design, but this might not be enough information. See, like, where's the dashboard to see all of them at once? Right? I can see if I go into it and click on it, but what if I want to see everything at once, like I've got here? I can see all the things that I'm watching, right? So this is an example of well-organized complexity, right? And not just simplicity for simplicity's sake. So know when to be simple, but also know when not to be simple, and how to organize it with all the stuff that we spoke about today, right? On how to make sure that it's a good experience for the users. That's considered. You're taking them into consideration. Cool, team. So I think that's all I had for today. I'm going to hand it over to you guys for questions, and otherwise I'll see you next Thursday. But curious, team, how do we go? What do you guys think?
This is really good stuff.
It was great. I have one feedback. If you go to your first slide, the very first slide, there's a
Sure.
spelling
Yeah,
mistake.
I put this together pretty quickly, but I'll fix that up. No worries. But
That's about it. It's really great.
so was it useful for you guys? Like you guys find this as developers? Like, do you find this useful to actually see some of these guidelines? I can share this. I can actually share this slide deck with you for those who would be interested in that. I'll post.
I've with my product management background, you know, those points are all very valid and all things that I've covered sort of in communicating with development teams. You know, when I sort of have, there's that line between, you know, meeting with the design team and coming up with something wonderful, and then, you know, sitting with developers and trying to communicate what that should. Something that often comes up, which is kind of interesting, and one of the reasons why I've kind of been diving into development a little bit is the, you know, sometimes there's this battle between, and I think you alluded to it already, the battle between sort of that beautiful design and then the function, and kind of having to say, well, but yeah, well, you know, you start throwing gradients on this button and this is gonna, you know, like it gets really
I know.
heated at times.
I know. Right? Form versus function. And unfortunately, there's no right answer. It's like saying, you know, what's the best way to live your life? I don't know. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I've had to err on the part of just saying, you know what, I realize that it's harder to do from a development side. It's going to take more time, but you know, we've budgeted for that because, you know, and so it's interesting to see you present it from a development perspective and then kind of inputting that into design. So yeah.
So I've always said, you know, being a developer makes you a better designer, and being a designer makes you a better developer.
Yeah.
So they actually feed into each other. And anytime I go into a job interview, they ask me, this often comes up as a question. They say, Tristan, we're a little bit confused. Do you put yourself as a designer or a developer? And I say both. Why choose? Because from my perspective, the job as a developer, and I've spoken about this at length many times, is increasing the scope of what you're responsible for.
Yeah.
Right, back in the day, you could just get away with doing some HTML and CSS and maybe a little bit of JavaScript. These days,
right,
you've got to know how to build a website, full stack, and you're going to learn how to deploy it, right? And you've got to learn how to troubleshoot it, and it's got to be responsive, and it's got to look good, and yada, 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 right? Like, it's unfortunate, right? But that's kind of what we signed up for as developers.
Yeah.
Well,
and then throw a product manager hat on top of that, and now you're looking at you know, what are the analytics to justify actually doing this? Intro
to marketing as well,
and a real full stack.
So
yeah,
it's something else entirely, isn't it? It's kind of like this unicorn hybrid thing that just does everything. And it's hard because that's kind of what we're expected to know now, and that's one of the reasons why this group and this community exists, is to make people aware that this is a thing that you actually, unfortunately, we do need to expand out just in order to be competitive and survive, but also B, right, how do we do this? How do we learn this stuff as a team? And that's really where we step in as a community and say, hey, look, we'll give you these resources, we'll help you upskill. That's kind of where things like, I'm really proud of some of the people here on this channel right now who've actually stepped up to say, hey, I want to be a designer for Project CM, right? So that's great, because really, guys, that's kind of what you need to do. is to you can't just kind of sit in your corner and say, you kind of can if you're really good at that, right? But then you're competing to be really good at something, and you've got other people who spend their entire life just doing that as well. So it's a different kind of game. Right? The other game is to kind of spread yourself out to multiple things and say, hey, I'm gonna be really good at what I do, but at multiple different things, and then I'm gonna learn how to put them all together. Now that is useful, because as someone who's hiring you, or your boss or someone, think about it from their perspective. Right? They don't have to go around to 3 or 4 different people to solve the problem. They can go to you, and you become the problem solver. Now that's pretty cool. Yeah. That also means that they don't have to manage the interaction between everyone and timelines, and all of that goes away because you know how to do it all. And that's what I recommend. That's my case for learning some of these skills. Now, the purpose of today's talk wasn't to be, the next Pablo Stanley illustrator or designer, for those who know who I'm talking about, right? So it's not about that. It's just about knowing some of the basics, right? Appreciating some of the visual things, some of the meta information around who we're talking to or who we're building for. Because that's honestly, guys, that's probably the biggest thing to take away from today is, who are you building this for? Because as developers, guess what happens? We lose sight of this, don't we? Right? We get so caught up in the technology and, oh, this is really cool. I get to use this piece of technology. I get to deploy it in this new thing, and we're constantly upskilling. This is what drives us as developers. But a lot of us, we don't often stop and sit back and really think about who we're building this for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who is actually going to be clicking on that button that I just built? I wonder what their intention is. Should it actually be in this place? I wonder what we should put in the copy. Right? Should it say sign up, or should it say, sign up for free? I wonder what will work well in terms of who's clicking on this. And it's these kind of questions, right? Is you're stepping outside of yourself and you're really thinking about somebody else and their experience. It's this empathy and saying, how can what I'm building, how can I build it for that person? Because if you're not, guess who you're building it for? Yourself. And that's kind of selfish. You're kidding yourself. Oh, look at this cool app I built. Yeah, that's great. For you. Right? The amount of developers that I met who bring out their cool side project idea, right? And I ask them, hey, what's the business? All their new business that they say they're going to build. And it's like, cool. Who's this for? Oh, it's the people that have this problem. Okay. Have you spoken to people about this problem, or is it just a problem that you thought you had? Oh, just me at the moment. Right, why did you go and spend thousands of hours building this app without talking to someone first? Right? Be empathetic. That's all design is. It's just be empathetic. Talk to people. Reach out. Understand why you're building things. My boss has this really great picture behind him. I love it. It says, build things that people want. Right? So if there's anything I could say today in terms of knowing your audience and colors and spacing and all that sort of stuff, it's build things that people want. Understand who you're building it for and build it for them. Yeah. Cool, team.
And that can be really hard as well.
Yeah, it can be really hard. Frank, you can stop recording if you want, mate.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah,